My name is Rod. I'm known as Anti-Fem-Nasty, which I have been for lots of years. I don't have a blog or nothing, but that's just my email, and I communicate with a lot of people in London. In my childhood, I was in care. I had 3 sisters, then 4 stepsisters, so I was one of 7 girls. I was the second oldest. My family, we had autism and Asperger's and a little bit of epilepsy in it, and the woman who we ended up in the care of had been in and out of mental hospitals, and so she claimed, but it does explain quite a lot. And what about her? So yes, and I'd seen the injustice in New Zealand as I grew up in New Zealand. I've been in London since '92, and what we went through as children, and of course in New Zealand feminism was huge in the 70s when I was a child, and the attitudes towards boys by school teachers. And our family had a friend who was a school teacher and a feminist, and in the late 60s or early 70s, probably late 60s, she came to Britain and got indoctrinated, and she caused my family an enormous amount of problems because it was a dysfunctional family. And her advice to my mother was to leave the children, which my mother did. And I come from a family with 3 generations where the women have left their children. My mother was given horrendous advice, and my mother had an enormous amount of problems and was in a bad marriage, and my parents were not supporting each other, to say the least. So I saw all that, and when I came to England, I eventually got a job in a design company because I'm very good at making things. I'm not qualified, but it was near Kingston, and of course all feminists, and I ended up having my health ruined by being and I ended up getting in trouble with the MI6, believe it or not, by trying to fight back after about 3 years of 2 or maybe more, a load of years of abuse. And what it did is it brought up all my problems from my childhood, and I ended up ill after that, and I lost my career and I lost my confidence. And then I started watching. Eventually, when I got a computer, I'm dyslexic, I'm kryptonite to computers. If I touch anything, I wreck it. But I am able to use them to a certain point. And then along came many years ago the happy misogynist, Paul Elam. And I was a great fan of Rich Zubatti. If anyone remembers him, he's brilliant. What Men Know and Women Don't. You can still see the YouTube. And of course, in those days, John the Other was part of A Voice for Men, and more people came in, and some people left or went or whatever. And I saw Danny Boy, and up against Big Red with I think JTO might have been there, and it was quite something. And I was always Paul Elam's no nonsense way of dealing with things, and the Voice for Men was a little aggressive in those days, but it had to be. What most people forget is when things are in their time, and when A Voice for Men was starting, the pressure they were under. And because I'm dyslexic and I had learning difficulties as a child and all sorts of things, I had a lot of problems as a kid, and a lot of it would have been emotional stuff, I think. But I used to contact Paul Elam and ask him if he would help me with writing things, and of course he was doing this. He nearly went mad. I don't think he would know it was me, but there were a lot of people who were keyboard warriors or inactivists, whinging and wanting help. And in a way, and I used to get so frustrated with using my computer, and that I was a bit like, what do they call her? Oh no, I wasn't like that, but I imagined myself to be akin to, what's the woman that was it, named off the Pokemon thing, that horrendous woman that was Trigglypuff. I think I felt like Trigglypuff at that time, where I was struggling to get my computer work and express myself. And the thing we have now, which most people don't realize, is with all the work that so many brilliant people have been doing, men and women, we now have we're able to verbalize what these problems are. I mean, Judgy Bitch has just been on in there, and it's brilliant. And I meet a lot of guys who've been doing this for years, and I've met a lot of guys who are Fathers for Justice. And the ability to actually verbalize what the feminists are doing. I do public speaking, and at Speaker's Corner we get accused of being feminists because we're using the terminology like gynocentrism and misandry. And they say, oh, you're just feminists. That's what people say. They're just trying to shame us, to shut us up or heckle us, or before they swear and all the rest of it. But we do now have a language And this comes from so many different kinds of people. It's really exciting. Have you got any questions? Sorry, I've gone on. You've asked me one question and I've bottled on. I have a tendency to do this. It's a tendency.
No, that's fine.
People with traits of Asperger's can talk the long hair, back leg off a mule. And often the people are bored silly next to them.
No, I asked the questions.
Yeah.
So you got into men's rights issues as a result of your caretaker when you were a child?
No, it's coming to Britain, having my career ruined, basically having a breakdown and being inactive for years, and or not working well in my employment or anything like that, and just basically being destroyed. I was in grief for what happened in my childhood. I was in permanent rage with feminists and middle class, upper class women and their attitudes towards me, that I have everything. And I worked in a New York design company based in New York but over here. And these women, one of them had a house in Earl's Court. She had a country house. She could afford to drive a car. She was the most miserable cow you'd ever meet. She was well educated, paid more than me because she was qualified. And a lot of the women, the window dressers and that, were actually paid more than me, and they deserved to be because they were bloody good at their job. And they were the top people. But this woman was miserable, along with the rest of them in the design bunch that had come from Kingston University. In Britain we have what's called a box room, which is a bedroom where you can barely fit a bed in it because it's so small. And I had a bicycle, and I was the happiest guy. I had this amazing job, which I was difficulty dealing with people, but I was very good at my job. And I just had a few things, and I was happy. She had everything and was miserable, and talking about male privilege and all the rest of it. And my outrage about the fact that I was actually very good at my job and I had my health destroyed by a lot of people that come from much better families than I did. And then we get accused at Speaker's Corner, oh, you're just judging this on your life's experience. My answer is, actually, there's a lot of men now. There's a lot of men who actually feel like this because of what's happening to them, more than a lot. And it's quite fascinating stuff. And we've done a lot of things, but we all get there in the morning and we're ready. We've been waiting all week or a couple of weeks to get ready, and we're all talking at once. And none of us, over time we've actually got better at shutting up and giving each other a turn. And we end up doing the Speaker's Corner thing, which is kind of what I'm doing here now, talking. My voice is probably getting louder. All at each other, sitting at a table when there's poor couples who have come to Britain to go on holiday and they can barely hear themselves eat next in the next table. And we're all there with our step ladders, which everyone's falling over. But we have some funny, very, very funny experiences. You can have a question, but there's something that one of my most important things that I can say, which I've been trying to say for years, and because I'm not known and I'm not really I'm not special. I'm not one of some of the brilliant people we got in there, and I admire them. They're fantastic. All the huge variety of different types of folk we got in there that are just, it's amazing. One of the most important things is some of the older people that were Fathers for Justice don't realise how important the internet is. And we're slowly weaning them on. And the young fellas which Karen brought in. I told her she was the Pied Piper for some of the young fellas we got. She's drawn in this huge population of young guys who are amazing. I mean, the gods on computers. We got a brilliant guy, Jordan. We got a guy called Ewan, who's one of our speakers. He's just amazing. He's a bit older than them, but he's a lot younger than us, and he's cool. And of course, David. Other people like that, and it's good. I was about to put my foot in it then by saying what their name is. I don't know if I don't have their permission to say who they are online, but caught myself then. But what was I saying? Well, the most important thing is, I think for me, is to get people who are online to start meeting offline, and start in the slower process of making friends in groups, trusting each other, and then maybe doing a little bit of activism. See, when we met years ago, 2011, 2012, we had a guy who's Fathers for Justice. And he was really burnt, he was burnt out with all of this because he's been doing it for years. And his frustration was with new people, was that we were always trying to reinvent the wheel, but we didn't have the guts to go out and say boo to a goose, basically. So he took us on a walk, and we had a joke. with the Pankhurst statue right next to the Houses of Parliament, we had a joke, and we were in a pub, and I said, well, how about we put a penny round her and do some work written on it? And we had a laugh about that. And so what we did, we said, well, we'll do something like that then. We'll have an activism. And it was little, he said, this is nothing. It's not even real activism, but it'll teach you how to go out and do something. So we went there and we had a look at it, and then we came back and he made a sign. He did a big sign called Harriet Harman, don't blame me for Harriet Harman, the sign said. And we went there, and a bunch of us, and we put the sign around the neck. They scaled the statue and put the sign around the neck, and we were filming it. We've lost the footage now. Due to just problems and things, but and the police came because it's right next to Parliament, and so there we left the statue with a big, huge sign about this big around, "Don't blame me for Harriet Harman," and then we left, and he showed us how to scale something, to climb it, because he scales buildings all the time, but and it actually bonded the group a little bit, and doing little things like that without damaging anything. I mean, we could have got in trouble with the police, but we didn't. One of the guys who's got his son, he legged for it once we did the filming. He was across the road miles away because he works overseas. He didn't want to have his job ruined, but he was quite in there and doing it, and he's a character. But and I didn't blame him for that, because he's got to look after his boy and all the rest of it. But it was great, and it bonded the group, and it made us laugh. I mean, the sign didn't make sense because Emmeline Pankhurst would have agreed with Harriet Harman. The sign didn't really make any sense, but it was actually a process that we did something. And this is what and when a group gets together, and he explained to us, as a lot of other Fathers for Justice, when you get a group of men together, unless you've got a really strong leader, the group gets to a certain size and it implodes. The guys, you get competition, men want to be the leader. Luckily, we sort of work where there is no leader. None of us are sort of determined enough or planning enough. A one leader guy who is strong, and I'm thinking more of a Paul Elam character here, is sort of an extraordinary thing, because he's kept a Voice for Men going. He's rough on people sometimes, to say the least, but he's actually created an amazing A Voice for Men. We all owe something to A Voice for Men, but there's also a lot of other things people don't know about, which we also owe to. But A Voice for Men has done a hell of a lot, to say the least. But we weren't the one strong character, but we're friends, and if you're going, often the guy in all the groups, it's well known, anyone who does it, the guy who puts a lot of work into the computer stuff, and that the falling out can be with that sort of thing, and it's common in groups. But that just happens to be an actual hurdle that people have to come up against, because somebody's got to do the computer work, and it's usually a very clever person that works hard. So, but this is the thing, and the thing is when you bond and you make friends, and this is what these young fellas are doing. One of our mates, Jordan here, brings together all the guys of his age, and this is fabulous. And they come and they watch guys who are 70s and stuff like that are talking. And they come to Speaker's Corner, and they come to the protests, Mike's circumcision protests. With Patrick. Patrick's been doing this for years. Mike works with Patrick. I mean, when I come into a place like this, I know so many people, and it's brilliant. Yesterday, I saw a few people wandering around here that didn't know anyone, and I felt like I should talk to them, but I was too tired. Yeah,
Okay.
we just call ourselves the London Group now, and we go there every fortnight, and whoever turns up, and I always put out to say that we're coming. Mike's come to one of them. Patrick, who's the anti-circumcision guy, has come to a couple of them. And speakers come, and whoever can come comes. We never have less than 3 people. We usually have 4 people. It goes up to 7 at the most, and we have more than one ladder, and we go up there, and we're very different people, so there's no rule on what you have to talk about, but it's always feminism and the ridiculousness of cultural Marxism, and it's really good. And we actually do. One day we had 3 people, guys, that said that we'd changed them. And this has never happened before. And we once had a feminist come up to us and said misandry, and the 2 guys gave themselves high fives, because it's the first time anyone in the crowd has used that word. Mm-hmm. And also, if you've actually got, in your city, wherever you are, if you've got people that turn up at a time like every month or whatever, and actually are there on the ground, it does something. it means that there's actually a physical presence as well as the internet stuff. And it doesn't make us really important or nothing, but it's a good example, and that's good, because if we were so good, it might put people off from trying, but we're not. It's good to just be an everyday person. And a lot of the guys I have we have in the group, and I have on my lists and things that I contact, they look like everyday people, but when you actually start listening to their stories and what they've been doing and how they've got into a lot of trouble from councils and things like that are politically correct, and some of the trouble they've got into just by freedom of speech, and they're not aggressive people, you realize that these are quite amazing people. There's a room full of extraordinary people over there now.
Yeah, I think this is good.
Yeah, this is good.
That was excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, I used to work with a lot of the autistic society with